Hello everyone and welcome to today's IELTS analysis class. My name is Alex and I will be looking at the task which was placed in the Facebook group, and I will be going through the answers to the questions and showing why this task is important in the context of the IELTS exam. So welcome to all of those who are watching on Facebook, YouTube. Welcome to all of those in the Swoosh and IELTS Connetics groups. Do let me know if you are watching the class live. Just send me a message in the chat box. And also, if you wish to participate and answer the questions, then please let me know as well in the chat box your answers to these questions, and I will look at them and read them out, particularly if you get the answers correct. So good evening to you, Alice. It's the afternoon at the moment in the UK, so I say good evening to you, but good afternoon from here, and we can start to have a look at the class. So using academic language for writing task 2, that is the title of today's session. And that is what you will have been practicing if you were doing the task from the Swoosh Connetics group. Okay, so I want to start by just having a look at what we mean by academic or formal language. So for writing task 2, you're required to write an opinion essay, and it's important that you use academic or formal language in order to complete this task. So we're going to have a look at some features of academic stroke formal language, and these are recommended for use for your writing task 2. Hello to Safa. Good morning where you are. Good morning to you. Okay, so having a look at some of these guidelines then. The first point is with academic language, we should not use contractions. So you can see in the example, when we're writing, we should write people do not rather than people don't. Avoiding contractions is an important feature of academic language. Also, we should avoid using informal vocabulary. So we should use children, for example, rather than words like kids, which are particularly informal. Another element of using academic language is that we should use more formal linkers. So an example of this would be using a linker such as therefore, as opposed to so. Phrasal verbs are also to be avoided with formal writing. So an example of this would be to leave school rather than to drop out of. Drop out being a phrasal verb and being informal. And here are the points which are particularly important for today's class, is that we should avoid exaggerating with our language. So an example here that would be appropriate is, it's often difficult to find a job, not it's always difficult to find a job. Because if you say always, that means in 100% of cases, which is an exaggeration. In some cases, maybe it's not so difficult. So we're looking at the word often as being more accurate because it doesn't exaggerate as much. And related to this also is being more precise. So we can see here in this sentence, many young people struggle to pay for university tuition, is a much more precise sentence than young people cannot pay for university tuition. So it's not going to be the case for all young people, which is why we use many instead to modify the sentence. And we can use struggle to as well to show that it's difficult rather than just cannot. This is more precise, it's more accurate, and it's more appropriate for academic writing. So these are the tips to stick to. Hello, by the way, to Tintu and Jayshree. Great to see you in the class today. So Safa, you're from Canada at the moment. That's where it is, the morning in Canada. And Jayshree, it's the evening time as well. So all different times of the day being represented in the class at the moment. So, looking at these points then in terms of avoiding exaggerating language and also being precise, this is something we must bear in mind. So, good academic writers are careful that they do not make statements which are too general. And you can see here, this is important when it comes to academic writing. Also, note that there are different ways of avoiding being too general in our writing. So we can use expressions such as these in many cases / the majority of cases. So using these expressions, we can see that we're not talking about every single situation. What we're talking about is a general trend or a general observation. So it's more precise rather than just saying it's extremely difficult at first to integrate in a new society. Well, not in every situation is that going to be true. So we can use in many cases or the majority of cases to be more precise. Using generally speaking as well is a way that we can be more precise. So again, we're not saying this is true all the time or in every situation, where we're looking at a situation which is often the case, but not always. And here as well, we've got for many. So instead of just writing the language barrier is a major problem, we can use for many instead. It's not a problem for everybody, but of course it will be for a large number of people. So a question. In the examples above, has the writer used modal verbs to avoid generalizations? Can you see any examples here of modal verbs? Words like might, can, could, may. Okay, so the answer to that question is no. Modal verbs haven't been used in this case. What have been used instead have been expressions to modify the sentence using adverbs. So generally speaking, generally using the adverb, and for many as well is modifying the sentence. It's not using a modal verb, but it's adding more detail to be more specific. So moving on to the task. We have here then 5 sentences, and what we want to do is to rewrite these sentences so that they are more precise, so that they read in a more academic manner. So we can see the first one is difficult to find a job when you're in a foreign country. So if anyone has a suggestion on this in terms of how we could modify this sentence to make it more precise, so it sounds more academic, then please let me know in the chat box. There's more than one possibility. So let me know what you think. Okay. So this is an example, isn't it, where we could use, just as we were looking at before, the expression for many. So if we just bring this up. Let's get a different color pen. So yeah, if we added this to the beginning of the sentence, we could modify it in this fashion. So for many, comma, we would use afterwards, it is difficult to find a job when you're in a foreign country. Okay, then obviously we'd have a lowercase it, because we've used for many to begin the sentence. Okay, so this is one example of how we could modify the sentence so that it is more precise and that it reads in a more academic fashion. So great, I can see some suggestions have come in. So Alice said it's often difficult. That's another way we could do this. So yeah, instead of using for many, we can use an adverb of frequency. It's often difficult to find a job. Safa has the suggestion that I made for many, very good. And Jayshree, it's hard to get a job when you're in a foreign country. But the point is, J3, we're trying to make this more specific and less general. So rather than it is hard, we could write for many it is hard. You've just obviously paraphrase hard with difficult. But to be more precise, we want to avoid it applying to every single person. There are very few situations that apply to every single person. So that's how we've modified the sentence. Almojuela, great to see you in the class today. Jovelyn Bassa. Okay. Hello to you. Jovelyn, hello to you. Okay, so let's have a look at the second sentence. What suggestions could we make for this one? Do let me know in the chat box if you have a suggestion. So here, we could use an adverb of frequency, like children often. I'm going to use an expression which means the same as often, and this is tend to. So children tend to copy the behavior of their parents. So again, this is just an expression which means basically it's something that happens often. And so it's more precise rather than just saying children as if it were all children. We can modify it in this way. So some other great suggestions. So Safa says most. So Safa would be most children rather than most of children. Yeah, most children. But that would be a good way of doing it. Okay, so Jovelyn, you're in Saudi Arabia. Great to see you in the class. Kate says, this was for the first one, generally speaking. We could use it at the beginning instead of for many. Yep, absolutely. And Kate also suggests here, children often copy the behavior of their parents. Good. So all good suggestions. The majority, so J3, yeah, the majority of, not kids, because kids is informal, the majority of children imitate their parents. Good, that works. Yeah, and children usually copy the behavior of their parents. That's from Alice. It works as well. Good. Okay, number 3. Let me know your suggestions for number 3. One possibility we can use here is we could use the modal verb can. So working from home can, and then obviously if we use can, we use the infinitive form of the verb afterwards. So working from home can make it difficult to build good relationships with your colleagues. So that's one way to make the sentence more precise. Do let me know in the chat box if you have any other suggestions. Okay. Moving on to number 4. So learning a language gets harder with age. Now we can use, let's use one of the other expressions which we saw earlier in the class. This is where we could use generally speaking. So generally speaking, and then a comma. Yeah, learning a language gets harder with age. So that's another way that we can make our sentences more precise, is by using this expression. So Alice suggests working from home may make it difficult to build relationships with colleagues. Good. Yeah, may rather than can. Absolutely. We can use that in this case for number 3. Okay, and finally, looking at number 5. Young people turn to crime because of the lack of employment opportunities in their area. Okay. What do we think for number 5? Any suggestions? So yeah, Kate is suggesting the majority. So it would be in this case the majority of young people turn to crime because of the lack of employment opportunities in their area. That could work. Good. Safa, in general. Yeah, we could use in general at the beginning. Okay, yeah, and also using the majority as well. So if you use majority, it should always be the majority. Okay, Kate with a new one there, often said that. Well, using actually a variation of that, we could use this expression. So it is often the case that. So here's a new expression, perhaps for some. So it's often the case that young people turn to crime because of the lack of employment opportunities in their area. Okay, so it's again another way of expressing the fact that it's not 100%, but it is something which is a trend, or it's something which happens quite regularly. So that's an expression we could use there. Okay, so that's the answer to the task. There's more than one possibility. There were some great suggestions that were made in the class today as well. So thank you for all of those. And that brings us to the end of today's answer analysis class. So thank you all for participating. And I hope that you do join me tomorrow for another task analysis class, where we will look at some important elements of what we need to address in order to do well in the IELTS exam. So thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow.